Hi, it's Guy Morrow here, and this short video forms part of a series of videos that accompany my book entitled Artist Management, Agility in the Creative and Cultural Industries. And this video concerns Chapter 7, Conclusions, and the section 7.8 entitled Big Data, Automation and the Future of Work. Services such as culture counts and business management theories such as the lean startup method and the agile methods that were examined in this book can all be located in an historical context in which there is increasingly prevalent discourse concerning big data and automation and the impact these will have on the lives and work of future human beings. Artist management practices need to be located within this historical moment. As Glow noted, quote, "What we learn from the evolving theoretical discourses around management throughout the 20th century is that its defining features are to some extent historically determined. There is no natural or fixed defining characteristic of management. How we define and understand management is a function of discourse." End quote. Therefore, this book has conceptualised artist management practices within the creative and cultural industries within the period between 2009 and 2017, and it is evident that the characteristics of artist management during this period are derivative of the context and practices of this particular period. And this period has seen the rise of IBM's Watson supercomputer, a machine that combines artificial intelligence and sophisticated analytical software for optimal performance as a question answering machine, which can be used by a vast range of organisations and businesses to aid decision making and to assess risk, including financial institutions such as banks, in their attempts to assess the level of risk they take on lending money to particular businesses and individuals. This particular period has also featured the use of policing software in the US state of California, whereby law enforcement agencies have seen robberies decline by a quarter following the use of the Predpol policing software. Regarding big data, Davis, who is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne, noted, quote, "Today the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil but data. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft and Alphabet, Google's parent company, are the 5 most valuable listed firms in the world, collectively taking in over US $25 billion in the first quarter of 2017 alone. Whether you're going for a run, watching television, browsing online, or even just sitting in traffic, virtually every activity creates a digital trace. You are being watched. Our connected, always-on world has generated huge volumes of data, but also heightened concerns. At the cost of our privacy, this data economy brings new opportunities, particularly in public policy. Big data is now being used to fight obesity, to predict crime hotspots, to help NASA map dark matter." End quote. In an analysis of Google's business model, Anderson went so far as to argue that data makes theory obsolete in his article provocatively entitled "The End of Theory, the Data Deluge Makes Scientific Method Obsolete." In the context of a discussion concerning changes to advertising and political campaigning, Cambridge Analytica CEO Alexander Nix noted that, quote, "Communication is fundamentally changing. Back in the days of Mad Men, communication was essentially top-down, that is, it's creative-led. Brilliant minds come together and come up with slogans like Beans means Heinz and Coca-Cola is it. They push these messages onto the audience in the hope that they resonate. Today, we don't need to guess at what creative solution may or may not work. We can use hundreds or thousands of individual data points on our targeted audiences to understand exactly which messages are going to appeal to which audiences way before the creative process starts." End quote. This book has examined artist management practices within the creative and cultural industries within this historical context, and in doing so has identified the following areas for further research. Are services such as culture counts automating artist management? What does big data mean for the field of arts management? Does the data deluge make aesthetic theory obsolete? Does the data deluge make artistic methods obsolete? How does the data deluge affect the artistic autonomy of the artist? It is at this juncture that the future of artist management needs to be considered in relation to the opportunities and threats relating to the automation of the workforce, and indeed in relation to the very concept of work itself. As philosopher Stiegler noted, quote, "The next 10 years will, according to numerous studies, predictions and economic assessments, be dominated by automation." Bill Gates declared in Washington that with the spread of software substitution, that is, illogical and algorithmic robots, come increasingly to control physical robots from smart cities to Amazon, via Mercedes factories, the subway and trucks that deliver to supermarkets from which cashiers and freight handlers are disappearing, if not customers, employment will drastically diminish over the next 20 years to the point of becoming an exception rather than the rule. End quote. Within the time period this book was written, the aforementioned progress relating to big data and its associated data economy was often coupled with discussion of automation and resultant job losses. The case studies and arguments put in this book concerning agile management strategies within the context of the arts at best provide a preliminary sketch of the role of the artist and the artist manager, the arts and the creative and cultural industries in the future. As Goldblum, who was the founder of Kaggle, a platform for predictive modelling and analytics competitions to which companies and researchers can post data and data scientists then compete to produce the best models for describing the data, noted, quote, "We will see algorithms starting to help make business decisions more frequently and more precisely than we can do as humans," which does obviously open up a scary question. If algorithms are capable of doing things, there is a question around jobs and what would people do when a lot of the jobs that we currently do are taken over by algorithms, end quote. A common refrain within such discourse is the pace at which many human beings' time will be freed from work. And another is that governments move too slowly to address the issues stemming from automation. As Goldblum continued, quote, "Historically, when we face big waves of innovation, humans have been able to retrain and we're very flexible to do things that technology can't do. The one potential difference here is that the change is coming so quickly. Do we have enough time to retrain? This is not like the Industrial Revolution, which took decades and decades and decades to unfold. The progress you can measure in years, not in decades." End quote. The arts will arguably have a role to play in how various economies can function outside of the framework of wage labour. As Stiegler noted, quote, "The time liberated by the end of work must be put to the service of an automated culture, but one capable of producing new value and reinventing work." Another question for further research, therefore, is, will the arts become an increasingly important means through which people have something to do with their time post-automation? Will the arts become an even more important way in which people will maintain their self-efficacy, generate meaning, identity and value? Questions relating to the role of the arts post-automation arguably shift the focus from economic value to the intrinsic or cultural value of art and of the social value of it. And therefore, a further question is this: do the instrumentalist arguments stemming from the creative industries literature become irrelevant if when there is a universal basic wage? Following Carey and Disianek, in most previous societies, artist management, arts management, and the creative and cultural industries would not have existed conceptually because art was not produced by a separate caste of people labelled artists who needed managing, but was spread throughout any particular community as a universal human practice. For Disianek, the uniting principle of art practices amongst early humans was the behavioural tendency of making special. In modern times, Creative Commons licensing liberates digitised artistic practices from the all rights reserved default setting of copyright law in ways that enable more people to be engaged in the process of making special through participation in the arts. While artist management, arts management, and the creative and cultural industries, which form the focus of this book, are primarily involved in helping to make special the works of a minority of people within a society who are known as artists, everyday creativities and Creative Commons licensing, and in the context of a discussion of the data economy, automation, and the future of work, raise a final question for further research. Will the arts simply shift back to being a universally human practice that gives us humans selective value and thus hope as we attempt to survive the increasing impacts of climate change and associated mass displacement of human groups? Perhaps this will become the most instrumentalist application of the work of artists and artist managers to date, or perhaps art has always had this function and does not simply exist for its own sake after all. Thank you very much.